A unique perspective on being a City of Madison alderperson from a departing member this morning on For the Record. Good morning, I'm Neil Heinen. When you think of the Madison Common Council, especially any one of us who have been around the city for more than a decade, words that don't spring easily to mind are young, diverse, female. Well, there's always been the one member elected from the downtown campus district, but that always seemed a bit of an anomaly. That's been changing. And I think it's safe to say that change has been felt. Bridget Maniaci served 2 terms representing an East Downtown district. She's stepping down, perhaps taking a break. But before she leaves to continue her formal education in Pittsburgh, we're going to talk about serving on the Madison City Council and politics in Madison. And I welcome to For the Record former Madison Alder, Bridget Maniaci. Bridget, thanks very much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm going to just counterintuitively start in the future rather than in the past and ask you why you're leaving and what you're doing.
Sure. Well, I had always sort of thought, do 2 terms, do 4 years, and get my degree. When I had first been running for office, my original plan was to go to graduate school 2 years after getting my undergraduate degree, and I won my election and had to call up the schools and say, hey guys, sorry, I can't come, I won my election.
You couldn't do both, huh?
I couldn't do both, no. And I had a lot of people asking me and calling me when I announced I wasn't running again, saying, what do you mean you're not running again? Why can't you go to grad school and be on the council? And to do the job effectively for my constituents and to do grad school effectively and really get the most out of it, you really just, there's not enough hours in the day to do both well. And that was very important to me. And so it's time to go get my graduate degree. I'm going for a Master's of Science in Public Policy and public management. I'm hooked. I really like this stuff. So I'm going to keep working, and that's my goal, and that's what I'm really passionate about is government, public service, and really cities. And I thought very hard, did I want to go and get a degree in planning? But with my time on the council and what I saw, I wanted to have that flexibility to really come at it with a really analytical approach. And so I want to go study real estate and market economics and look at a whole host of variety of issues and have those tools to be able to build that career for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And everything that I've seen, I think for me, it's really the right step to really have what it takes to keep working forward in this for many years to come.
I assume Carnegie Mellon has just what you're looking for.
It does. I've had a lot of time to go look at schools. I was very happy I got into all the schools I applied for, but I received a really fantastic scholarship offer. As you know, the city council here is not like Milwaukee or other places. It does not pay very well, and I didn't want my decision to be made by debt and have that debt cloud hanging over your head.
Yeah.
And so many people that I know that are young are struggling with that. We're not buying houses, we're going to college and taking on significant loans.
Yeah.
We still have that mortgage, but it's a very different mortgage on our future.
So let's go back to the beginning and talk about why you ran, and particularly, Bridget, in the context of this image of the Madison City Council, which has been changing for a while. I mean, I don't want to overdo it, but it hasn't been perceived as perhaps young, dynamic, diverse, and female, and particularly not leadership roles.
Well, I think in terms of being female, there's been a good representation. I think at one point when I was on, I counted, and there were 9 of 20 council members that were female.
In the last 5 years, okay.
Yeah, so it was, in terms of gender, it was pretty well balanced. But in terms of diversity, and this is, I think, goes to the structure of the council and sort of how it has advanced and evolved and the issues facing us, it precludes a lot of folks that I think are very important and valuable to have at the table. Because of its time constraints on your evenings, just the demands, it's very hard to have folks who are still working on building their careers come in and have the time to do this
How much
job.
time do you think you spend on the job?
I would say an easy week would be 40 hours a week. If you add up all the meeting times. Also, what you have to realize is meetings don't start till 4:30 or 5 o'clock, but if you want to do anything, you want to work on anything, you want to get anything done, City Hall staff leaves, the doors lock, the lights go off at 4:30 in the afternoon. So you're also supposed to have the capacity to be able to go down in the middle of the day. Also, in terms of if you're working with businesses in your district, I had a number of small businesses, or a lot of folks operate during normal business hours, and so you have to have that flexibility of schedule to be able to sort of be all things to all people, which means you're running a lot from here to there. And you know, I think the other point in sort of taking a break right now after 4 years is I think it's really important to do this on your own terms. And I see a lot of politicians who it's like one more race, I have to run for this, and you get very tired and very burnt out. And I don't want to lose that passion that I have. And so I really wanted to take a step back. I felt like, you know, everything that I had listed when I was first running of ideas of things I wanted to work on, I feel like I've been very successful in really going down that list and crossing things off. When I look at everything and kind of totaled it up, my district over the last 4 years has received over $250 million, $250 million in investment and improvements for a strip of the isthmus that's about 1.5 miles long.
To define your district for people
Sure.
who don't know it.
Well, with the redistricting, it had one block of State Street, so from State and Francis, the fraternities and sororities on Langdon Street, very undergraduate population, stretching out to where the Edgewater is and down towards James Madison Park, and continuing
Mansion
down
Hill
Mansion
and-
Hill,
yep.
and then continuing down to Tenny Lapham and going to the river and right by Tenny Park there. So it's a nice compact district. I like that I could walk my district, that you can really get to know your neighbors. I feel, especially as an alder, you really are the caseworker for the neighborhood. And I think it's really valuable, and the alders that do well have a very keen sense of who lives in their district and what's going on in their lives.
You know, I'm sure they're also individual, and they don't all take a 40-hour-a-week approach to this. So there must be some sense of tension on the board, just in terms of people's approach to it. What did it feel like, you know, to be in that room with that group of people, all of whom came from such different backgrounds, had different perspectives on serving, and different views, perhaps, of what the council how it should operate?
Well, I think if you come in thinking it'll be a part-time job, you learn very quickly that if my district downtown is very heavy on casework, right, where I have a lot of permits or licenses, or there's a lot of projects going on that are demanding a lot of time, and you have a quieter district, what I have found is that those alders end up filling in on a lot of committee work and longer-term policy. And so it really is a team approach. I find it interesting, though, and I was watching the council meeting on Tuesday, and you know, you do get that time check where you hear some alders chiming in going about how late it is.
Yep.
And but I think we're really there to do a job.
Does it function well?
It does. And everybody changes. And so the dynamics to who has just come on the council is going to really alter the body dynamics significantly. Leadership changes on an annual basis. So, you know, there's sort of an ebb and flow. But former Alder Wallner, David Wallner, told me they used to have like Hawaiian shirt night on the council. And I can't imagine the council today doing that. I don't know if things were a little more leisurely. About 20 years ago, but I feel like we're consistently being hit with a whole host of issues on a regular basis, and we have constituents and members of the public who are there to testify, and I feel like we take the job very seriously. I see that professionalism from my colleagues, and I really appreciate that.
All right, I want to talk about the council as a reflection of the city when we come back right after this. All of a sudden, my brain. I am back with former Madison alderwoman Bridget Maniaci, who represented a downtown district, who's leaving to pursue her formal education, but is keeping an apartment in Madison.
Yes.
So we'll talk about the future in a little bit. But just in terms of how you've described the council, how you've described the different approaches to the council, how well does it reflect the city now? And what's your sense of, again, the efficacy of the council, given that these are people representing individual districts, that's why they were elected. How do you feel like it really represents sort of the broader picture of who we are and common goals and visions that this city might have or not have?
Well, I think
It's a huge question.
yes,
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Because the districts are relatively small, there are about 11,500 people per district. You have sort of a local flavor to each district, and that shows and it's representative. I think on the whole, there's a lot of really good diversity on the council. I was really happy to see Maurice Cheeks run. I think in terms of being a really great young leader in the city, if I had to leave, I was really glad Maurice was coming on.
Yep.
I think clearly diversity is something the city struggles with. I think at times the council has struggled with it. I would love to see more folks that are sort of working class. It's very hard to do the job and run for the job if you have small children at home, if you have to really be working full-time 9 to 5. Now, there are some districts and a number of alders who are able to do that. I think it really depends on the district and the city, but if you have a very limited income district, how are you going to get? And that's a question that I think a lot of folks in the city that are involved in local politics really have to look at. How do we make sure that we're bringing up the next level, the next bench, the next leadership of the city that is really reflective, not just of kind of where the city has been, but really where it's headed. Because what I have found, especially sitting on the housing committee, unless you have folks that can directly speak from their experiences on a number of issues, there are perspectives that really get lost in the mix and fall through the cracks. And I think it's important to have folks who have directly been involved with social service programs, that have seen the struggles that are happening in the neighborhoods. And I think that you need to make sure that you have that also so that there's that direct connection with your constituents, that they understand that you understand.
I mean, it's so interesting in this city because the tension that you identified is probably seen most clearly in the mayor. Mm-hmm. I mean, here you've got a boomer, but with a legacy that we're all well familiar with. Mm-hmm. Talk about the mayor. Talk about how you worked with him, how the council works with him, and how you think his relationship to the city is affecting this city's direction and growth.
Sure. Well, I think the situation when he was elected was a very tenuous situation. There was a lot going on with the protests.
You were a supporter of Dave Cheslevich. You worked with Dave.
Yep. And it was very interesting because there were points, though, during my first term where I was talking more with Paul and with former Mayor Sensenbrenner than I was talking with Dave.
Yep.
And so I was thinking that Paul would come in and it would be a really great working relationship. Things didn't quite work out that way, and that was kind of a sad thing for me, at least. I think a lot of council members really try hard, and they want to advocate for their districts, and they want to see the levers and pulleys of City Hall work for their district. And if you look at, I think of, Matt Fair, Alder Fair. He is working so hard, especially in the southwest side, to try to bring attention to what needs to start happening and shifting, and trying to really advocate for resources. And so I think all the alders try to do that, and the success or failure of that on their advocacy and efficacy, I don't really think would. I think they work very hard, and it's a question of whether it's a priority with everything else going on for the mayor's office.
Bridget, this is the first council I remember that took a sort of unified approach to the budget in the last election, and it was interesting to watch.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and one thing that I think about is a number of issues that I was able to receive supermajority votes for. And there's been a number of issues where the council has sat through, I think Overture is a major one, where we all sat in a room repeatedly on multiple nights with big, thick binders. We took tours. We really dug into the nitty-gritty meat and potatoes part of the issues. And I think that that's something that maybe is different with this council, that in past councils that the mayor has worked with is a shift, is where a number of council members are coming from a very professional policy standpoint. This last term, I'm thinking of Alder Rhodes Conway and others. So It's interesting. We're able to do the homework, and so if there's a pitch that comes our way, we're really able to bat it and field it. And I don't know if that's a change. I wasn't on the council 20 years ago or 30 years ago, so I can't really tell you if the council then was sort of as it is now. But I think the council really takes a really professional view on it, and we expect that back.
So just the perspective you just described is interesting to me because it may affect your answer to this next question. I want to know how social networking has changed being a city council member. Now, I don't know, maybe you used it when you started 5 years ago, but it seems like it's even more prevalent now. How has it changed things?
I just laughed because I came into the IT department and said, I want a Google Calendar and a Twitter feed. I have to be able to communicate with my constituents, and they just kind of blankly stared at me. But it's hilarious now.
This is right when you got elected?
Yeah, within
shortly
thereafter. Because not everyone's on listservs, right? Not everyone is plugged into their local neighborhood association. We have to find ways, especially if you have a district that has a more disjointed organizational network about it, you have to be able to reach out to folks. The job is 24/7. The phones never stop beeping. The instant updates on Facebook, on Twitter, you're always watching what's going on. I think this week with the state budget, and in finance committee, and watching how there were updates going on throughout the night about what was going on. That's something that I was actually getting a hold of legislators late at night. Everybody was watching this, and so the job doesn't stop. And what you have to do to be okay on a day-to-day level is find a way to carve that out for yourself and still be able to sort of put some order around what is there's always things coming at your head that you have to respond to. And I think the alders that have done well are those that have really pushed for bringing City Hall into the 21st century and trying to modernize how we reach out. And I think when I look at other cities around the country, talk with other young elected officials, it's very interesting to see sort of the legs. And so I do feel like we're really getting there. We're working very hard.
Okay. We can't have a conversation about your career without talking about the Edgewater. We're going to do that when we come back right after this.
Do not have enough meetings to be able to pass the lending agreements needed to get the money into the hands of the developer by the end of 2011. It's going to need a reauthorization for 2012, and tonight's the night to do it.
So we're talking about youth and diversity on the council, and here you are, Bridget Maniaci, in the middle of your first 4 years in office, and you find yourself smack dab in the middle of one of the most difficult discussions that this community has had in a long time, and nuanced and complicated.
Yes.
And let's not go through the whole thing, but just ask you from where you sit now, what was the lesson of the Edgewater?
Well, man, there's so many lessons, but I think really you stick to your guns. If there's something that you're passionate about, that you believe in, and that you really believe is the right direction, to fight for that.
Your district believed in this project.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. And I look at everything that the immediate neighborhood will benefit from, and then you look at the bigger picture about what the city will gain from tax base, from rooms, for hotels to support the city. We're consistently losing conferences to Monona Terrace. Greg McManners gave a very good in-depth interview with the Isthmus talking about that. Right. We need these rooms. We need to build this.
But you took a lot from some big people in this community.
Well, and when I was running, I had to answer this question to people on the doorsteps who just kind of saw this young kid that looked like they were in college go, well, I've lived here for 30 years. What do you know about the east side of Madison? What do you know about this neighborhood? What do you know about the city? And I had to really think about that, and I got this quiet resolve from the fact that my family has been here for many generations. My great-grandparents' house is about where the Whole Foods is on University Avenue. And that gave me the quiet resolve to go up against someone like Fred Mose, who stakes a claim on the city and has a vision for the city. And I felt like even if I was young, I was able to stand up and say, look, I've done my homework and I have a good sense about the city and what it is and what it can be. And I thought that this project really pushed the city forward in a direction that we needed to go. And there were, like you said, nuanced, complicated, and there were a lot of questions, and where people felt on it were shifted across that matrix. Should the city be involved financially or not? It was a different question than, is this a good project or not?
You seem comfortable with the media. Maybe that's something you grew into over 4 or 5 years, but what's your assessment of the media in this community and how it has covered you and these issues?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's all interesting. And having come up through college in photojournalism, working for the paper, having beat assignments for the Capital Times, working for the Onion, I've known many of the journalists on a professional level and on a personal level. It's been interesting to see the coverage, and we do have some good diversity and bias in the press in the city. So there was a shifting kind of sense of who's going to call me for a quote, who's going to not call me for a quote. I think that every community struggles with what's going on with the media, with what's going on. Are we really getting the full story and the full picture? I used to joke that the Badger Herald had the best City Hall coverage because they would show up for committee meetings. Now they're going to a limited print distribution and online, which is fascinating to me, which is totally of their own choosing. It's not really a financially driven decision in my understanding of it. So I think, especially with these kind of issues, whether it's Overture, whether it's Edgewater, whether what's going on with the city budget, it's very difficult for citizens today. And having that insider perspective, and when I watch things, it's very interesting to see what gets covered and how. And it's very difficult to really understand what's going on behind the scenes because the cameras only show up at the council meeting for the final vote.
Right.
They're not there for that whole process beforehand where things get deliberated out.
I knew I shouldn't have saved this question for last. We have 30 seconds left.
Sure.
You're coming back?
Yeah.
Can you see public office again someday?
Oh yeah. You know, I'm going to take the time for what I need to do professionally and really learn. Madison's home. I plan to be here next summer, and I'm keeping my apartment. So we'll see.
Good luck. Enjoy Pittsburgh. It's a
Thank
great
you.
city. We're going to come back and wrap up For the Record right after this. My thanks to Bridget Maniaci for being here today. Next week, we'll look at music education, the state of the local music scene, and the upcoming Madison Area Music Awards. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next Sunday.